Okay, we are live on YouTube. We're going to go live on my Quorum's like page.
Doggone it.
That's the engineer.
Try what you mean.
Yeah. Last 5 minutes of the show, I'm always, my service dies or something.
The service is, okay. No sudden moves, y'all.
Damn it, it keeps going there.
Glad I'm not the only one.
You keep doing it in my face.
It's like 5 minutes behind before. But it's 10 o'clock.
Okay, we gotta get started. Facebook and no Facebook.
Whoa. So we're not on Facebook? What?
Huh?
Wait, we're not.
We're not streaming on Facebook?
Well, we're streaming on my Quorum
Are you
here,
streaming?
but
Talking about where
KBO,
Al's streaming.
yeah, KBO.
No, unless it goes on my, it might end up going on mine, because that's what they keep locking into my Facebook.
I'm gonna have to
The only one
friend
who's
you.
logged in easily and smoothly today?
That's what it's looking like so far. Yeah, that's the only
Yeah,
one
my
that's
phone don't
working.
wanna cooperate.
That's the only one that's working.
Don't kick it, don't kick it, don't kick it.
Yeah, it shakes the camera.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
that's
go ahead
gonna
and get
be
started.
nut.
We'll get you on Facebook while we're getting.
Alright.
Go ahead. Wait a minute, let me get your
Table.
music going. I got it. Shoot.
Debris?
It's on.
Debris?
Oh,
Get that long to set up? Wow.
Debris. Boom, mic's on.
Go ahead and start.
Right now?
Yeah. Since it's 10 o'clock.
Welcome to the Maya Quorum. This is our 9th show. I would like to reach out to all of our guests. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Apollo Olango, brother of Alfred Olango, that was gunned down by law enforcement in El Cajon, California, here in San Diego. This event has led to a lot of widespread awakenings about what is going on in our society, community, and in our country. And due to that, I have received a platform from KBOK Radio here with Maya Quorum to discuss some of those issues and hopefully enlighten a lot of listeners on some of the topics and subjects more in depth. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to have Tasha Williamson introduce herself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tasha Williamson. Thank you for having me on again. I'm a civil rights activist, community advocate. I work with mobile response teams with San Diego Compassion Project on homicides throughout the San Diego County, and with CAS, Community Assistance Support Team, on violent injuries throughout the San Diego County. And they also support and work with the trainings, the community involved trainings for law enforcement and probation, also around the county. And then also just trying to build better relationships with law enforcement and community, and also hold police accountable and police accountability, and also humanize that all of us count, all of us matter, no matter what our backgrounds may be, our situations may be as well. So thank you. I'm also a mother of 4.
Oh. Happy late Mother's Day, Tasha. Thank you very much for being with us here today. Our next.
Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Art Fusco. Used to be a Master at Arms in the Navy. Today I'm a big history buff. We're about police reform. We're the balance between those who think that law enforcement and the criminal justice system doesn't need reform. And so I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to be here with Apollo and Tasha and Kat. And I'm ready to start.
Thank you very much, Art. I appreciate that. And our next is the one and only Wildcat. Kat, let them know.
Yes, so this is Kat calling, actually here physically from UAPTSD Cop Watch. So our role has been basically kind of being the eyes on the ground. Something that I wanted to express, which I always do in every episode, is protest, solidarity, love, and resistance in honor of up to, I believe, including most recently, there was 856 lives taken at the hands of law enforcement since the 1950s, including every branch of law enforcement in the county. The reason why we do track all of them, because they, like I said, all of them matter as far as in which manner in which their life was taken. Considering, and for that, my apologies.
No worries.
Because this is a situation regarding SWAT, and I also wanted to introduce, we do have some very special guests here. I'm having some difficulty with my mobile device, but we have a very special guest, the family of Paul Rivera, whose life was stolen at the hands of San Diego. Raul,
Yeah.
thank you. Raul Rivera, whose life was stolen at the hands of San Diego police this past Sunday, as well as the family of Jonathan Coronel, whose life was stolen by Vista sheriffs. Now, since we're going to be talking about SWAT and emphasizing 856 lives, the following, which we found that were actually killed in SWAT-type situations, if we could just remember them and their families. Dale Thomas Burton, San Diego, this was in 1989, 32 years old. Scott Hassadorn from El Cajon, this was in 1992 at 32 years old. Craig Forrest Jones, and back in 96, he was 48. Miguel Valentin Lorenzo, that was back in 97, he's 34 years old. George Figueroa, in 1997, 41 years old. Jose Luis Ramirez, in 1999, he was 30. Barry Wayne Morgan, San Diego Police, in 2003, he was 41. Adolfo Vargas Tovar, he was 47, this was in 2013, and Sergio Weck in 2016 at 32 years old, killed by Peter Myers and Christopher Villanueva.
These are all lives lost from SWAT.
SWAT-type situations that were reported by police,
Okay.
and a lot of the data that we collect is based on media sources. So we really don't have like kind of an inside scoop as to what exactly happened,
What
but
took
this is
place
how it
on
was
the
framed. Yeah, this was
Okay.
how it was framed in media,
Yeah,
that
the
it was a
law
SWAT
enforcement
type.
narrative.
Pretty much law enforcement combined with mainstream media. So I think that's another reason why we have this. So we give the families an additional voice outside of any kind of influence. And
Definitely, those are very unfortunate situations when it has to, lead to the loss of somebody's life. And whenever that happens, I think that the community at large should be able to take that into consideration. And man, it's a real difficult thing. But Tasha, can you talk more about the guests that we'll be having today?
Definitely. So we have Bree, who is the cousin of Raul. Raul was murdered last Sunday, and you all may have heard about it.
This was in Nestor, right?
Yes, this was in the Nestor neighborhood. He was in the center of the what do you call it? The street, where with a what appears to be a knife, walking in circles. Clearly, he was not mentally stable, and they know that because there was a prior call that I will allow the cousin to talk about a little bit later. That happened to 911, where he could have been not killed
Some case
hours
kind of
later.
like my brother's.
Yeah, not hours later.
Was this by the sheriff?
It was by SDPD.
SDPD in Vista.
The SDPD.
Well,
His
in
case
South
is
Bay.
in South Bay.
Okay, in South
Yeah,
Bay.
South
Okay,
Bay,
my
so
apologies.
closer to the border.
Wow.
And so
Nestor's in the Imperial Beach area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any related situation that should have happened there at some point, or what's the deal with the?
I think that there was in this situation, the fluid information that's coming out is that the police had made contact prior, and may have had an ability to do something else. And then when they make contact hours later, the result ends his life. And so clearly he is, again, we're dealing with someone who has mental health issues and impairments, and the response to those types of individuals has not been in the tactics that we're understanding SWAT uses. And so what we're saying is that what I've read, looking at the history, looking at my notes, is SWAT is a very patient, tactical response team.
Theoretically, that we'd like to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't see that when we have responding officers that are getting 911 calls, responding to scenes, that the patience is not the same, the tactics may not be the same, and the tolerance may not be the same as well.
When I spoke to Chief Measley, who said that he requested for doubling PERT clinicians and activity within San Diego County. I mean, that is definitely just, he requested it, doesn't mean it's going to be approved. But that allows us to understand that currently he knows that it is needed.
Correct.
But a situation like this, again in San Diego, opens up that situation saying, where is PERT? And why are they not playing more of a role in these situations? It's necessary, it's needed. Even the chief knows that it's needed. But why are lives still being lost in these situations and circumstances? You know, that's a question that needs to be answered.
And I definitely agree. I believe that all officers are given some PERT training in academy. And I don't know that PERT training is consistently given over a period of time throughout their career. I know that PERT officers who are involved in the team of PERT with clinicians and I believe a nurse are extensively trained in PERT. I do know that they increased every division by 3 PERT members. So I'm not sure if that's officers or clinicians, but I know that there were 3 additional members added to each division's PERT. And so my concern is that even if PERT was to respond, if somebody is a danger to themselves or others, a clinician is not going to be allowed to get that close. You know, a clinician usually, to my understanding, they're not going to put a clinician in harm's way. And so they will have to make sure that that clinician will be safe, or some way make sure that clinician is safe when that clinician makes contact, a PERT clinician makes contact with a person that they're responding to. My issue is that when people call 911 and there's somebody acting erratic, when we say acting erratic, we need to make sure that people are clear that we need PERT. This is a PERT 911. This is a PERT call.
Ask for PERT. The same way my sister did. The same way my sister did. Said we need, PERT. We need PERT to be there in this situation, or else the people that are going to come might not have the training to be patient. So that's our first guest, Bree, and the second one.
The second guest will be Rocio, who is the cousin of Jonathan Cornell, who witnessed a witness who was there at the time of the shooting when he was shot in the backyard. Their statement is very different from the police report statement, and the witness is saying that they clearly saw Jonathan lying on his stomach with his hands out. The police report is saying that he was reaching, a crouched position, reaching for something with his hand under his shirt. The cousin will talk.
You mean have his shirt off?
So
how can you reach for something under your shirt if you don't have a shirt on? I'm sorry, that's just a question I have.
So that would be a question we definitely would love for the cousin to respond to. Rocio is also saying that there were 22 bullet wounds to her cousin's body, and clearly there was only one officer that shot.
You had to reload in order for.
And
they're saying that he reloaded but didn't shoot. And so there's clearly, some conflicting information that's being given out on both sides. And we really want to know the facts. We believe that what is currently happening in these police shootings is that the people that are being killed their families are being re-victimized because the information that is being put out about the person that was being killed, which is their loved one, is a very dehumanizing picture.
I had to go through that same situation.
So we're saying that we need to humanize everybody. These people still count. These lives still matter. And we want, we want to ensure, is it justice or is it just us? As that is a quote from Aviva Laster. And when she said it, she says it in a sense of, are we really getting justice, all of us, or is it just us who, are the people that are closest to the pain, and people who are Black, brown, and poor, and mental health? Are we the ones that are just not receiving justice and having our rights violated in those type of aspects? And so, again, we have the family members here that will be talking once we come back from break, and give more information on that. But it's a really sad place. We have no accountability, clearly, and if we do have some falsified reports or information that is inaccurate on the part of law enforcement, there has been no justice to clear that up and rectify it. We have officers that are not filling out reports or lying. There needs to be justice for them as well.
There does. I definitely agree. And I'd like to sign off and send us to our first break. When we return, we'll have our guests, but we will start with a historical anchor. We have switched up the lineup briefly today just to accommodate our two guests today. Thank you very much. See you when you get back. We're on break, right, brother?
Yeah.
All right. I was watching that time to the best of my ability.
Great. You were watching it, I wasn't.
Yeah, please, man. Let's try to sync that up, because that's the only thing I have. I can't, say let's go on break if I.
No, I mean,
we're still streaming. Don't worry about it. We're organized. We're organized.
I wasn't watching the clock. I'm actually trying to get all the commercials set up.
Okay.
Oops.
Am I gonna be able to hear the theme this time? Because it hypes me up. I need that.
I'm working on commercials right now, trying to get them all.
That's.
I'm working on trying to get these in position. I would try to.
So he's gonna throw that on the mic to get me hyped. Thank you.
Huh?
Here.
How loud does that get?
What?
Art's helping out here. Oh, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
That's our.
I found that the lyrics are rule this land, rule our land, rule with peace, and then later on it adds rule with love.
Do you see why I chose it?
I love it.
I knew why I chose it.
As soon as once I learned that's the lyrics, I was like, oh, you put it on the head.
Apollo is up to something. Maybe he thinks before he does things. Interesting.
All right, I'm gonna.
Interesting.
For now because
yes, I do. I consider a lot of things.
Go back online.
You count down for me, and I'll get it going. 37 is what we have. 37:58.
Yeah.
Is that what we have? Okay. Hello, Bree and Rose. How you doing? I will see you right here.
Right quick.
thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for coming. This mic right here will take care of all three of you.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Go.
Yes.
Welcome back to KBLK. Thank you very much. This is our 9th episode, which is SWAT. I am here with some very special guests, and the rest of the quorum is here. I'm feeling very, very warm right now. I think Rosario just got done with breakfast. Rocio, I call her Rosario every time. Ever since I met her last year, I call her Rosario. I still am not sure why I do that. Rocio. I got it written down here, Rocio. I'll make sure that I get that right. That's probably why, for some weird reason, I didn't want to be the person introducing you. I was trying to vex that off to somebody else the best I could. So I'm going to start with a historical anchor from Art over here, and then it will come to my good friend Tasha, and we will get into the conversations that are sitting here at the table with us today. I think that we'll be able to get deep into it. We'll make it relate to SWAT, and we'll give the best information that we can with SWAT from both sides of the spectrum. And Art, can we start with the historical anchor?
All right, so today we're talking about SWAT. So after the Hublone shootout and Watts riots in 1965, an LAPD officer named John Nelson, who had been part of a special task force in the Vietnam War, suggested creating a similar unit to the task force he had been part of. He suggested this to his superior, Daryl Gates, and together they set up the SWAT team. They trained in both Camp Pendleton and in the Universal Studios back lot in Universal Studios.
Yeah, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and so just a few years after they were established, what was supposed to be used for large, dangerous incidents became used to just serve warrants on nonviolent drug offenders. For instance, in October of 1969, 7 officers raided an apartment in Whittier, California, looking for marijuana. They raided the wrong apartment, though. On the next floor, Hayward Dyer and his wife had woken up from the commotion. They had taken their baby and went down to see what was happening, but they were stopped by armed police. After realizing that they were at the wrong place, they left the apartment to raid the correct one. During that raid, an officer accidentally shot a rifle into the floor, and on the other side, Hayward Dyer was still holding his son. He was shot in the head and killed and dropped the baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In 1969, LAPD officer responded to a noise complaint at the Black Panthers LA branch. And when he went in, he was greeted with guns and told to leave. So LAPD decided to raid the building. So on the morning of December of 1969, SWAT tried entering through the back door, but the door was blocked by a large dirt heap that they were using to dig tunnels in. So they repositioned to go through the front, and while that was going on, other officers began scaling the building, which caught the sights of Panther lookouts who started yelling that they were here.
Mm-hmm.
By the time SWAT entered through the front door, the Panthers were actually ready and began shooting at them.
Wow.
The officers were, 3 officers were wounded, and they retreated with their wounded. And then afterwards, they shut down the entire street after that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea as to why they were attempting to penetrate this particular building?
It was because when that first officer originally entered the building, they pulled guns out on him,
Okay.
and that's illegal. So they used that as
Did they know whether or not those guns were registered or legally being held within?
Was this during open carry?
I don't. I don't.
They were inside their establishment, though.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the laws allow you to have a weapon within your establishment
But,
property.
Yeah.
I just want to understand the moral grounds of why they were attempting to get into this building and using SWAT for it.
Yeah.
Well, no. The reason why they decided to use SWAT was because they wanted to, they wanted to show it off. They realized that the LA branch of the Black Panther Party was one of the largest branches, and they knew that shutting that down would send a message.
Okay.
Well, I think they also dehumanized the Black Panther
Yeah,
Party.
they did.
They saw them as a threat
criminalized-
because
they
of breakfast
criminalized
programs and
But
yeah.
they criminalized some of the activity and people, and dehumanized them so that back then racism was very outward, prevalent.
Yeah.
And the things that law enforcement were doing to some of the Black Panthers was very criminal on the side of law enforcement, and the way that they were treating those individuals that were Black Panther members.
Understood.
And so we need to understand that when that treatment persists, people get very angry, and we have situations where people believe that they have to protect themselves from law enforcement, and so we need to be real clear about that when we talk about the Black Panther Party, because
especially at that particular time,
because the Black Panther Party was protection to the neighborhoods that they served, and so at that particular time, law enforcement was very damaging.
They got the
in
green
the
light
Black
to basically
community
break
doing-
it down.
Mhm.
Like,
Well, they were damaging to just people in the neighborhood. The way they treated Blacks and Latinos in the community when the Black Panthers were around was very hostile, was very degrading, was very criminal. And if that was to happen today, those officers would be fired, criminalized, and no longer be officers in the way they treated our people back then.
I bet it would be very difficult to get that to happen still.
It is very difficult. You're
Or-
absolutely right.
Or do you have the
Actually, to finish the story off, it was a 3-hour long standoff where they shot thousands of rounds at each other. while this was going on, the acting police chief, who was now Daryl Gates, who helped us set up the SWAT in the first place, requested a grenade launcher from Camp Pendleton. But they told him that they would need to clear with the Department of Defense and the president.
Oh my goodness.
Permission was granted, but before they could procure the grenade launcher, the Panthers decided to surrender. So 6 Panthers were arrested.
Who was president at the time?
Of the United States?
Yes, that's
1969. That would be.
Anybody a history buff?
I want to say.
I'm a neutralized citizen, and I can't remember.
I want to say Johnson.
Okay, that makes
right
sense.
before Nixon. It was his last
not
year.
a crook.
So it was granted, but of course, before they got the grenade launcher, the Panthers surrendered.
Okay.
I'm gonna skip one of these.
Okay.
So eventually, actual criminals got smart about SWAT, and they started fortifying their houses. So LAPD decided that they were going to receive 2 APCs, which are these large all-terrain vehicles, and that can breach through walls, and to put a battering ram in front of it.
Wow.
So they attached the battery.
LAPD has been innovators of so much in policing, haven't they?
They
most of the
actually
things
have.
you bring up on international, like basically just national procedures.
I thought I was going to do a lot of San Diego history.
They are like the Google of police, man.
And I learned that a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to SWAT and everything, LAPD, they're the ones that started it.
They've developed a lot.
But yeah, so in 1985, they conducted their first raid with it. After SWAT took position, the APC rammed into the side of the house, punching a hole through it. Once they widened the hole, the APC backed up and SWAT went in. There were no drugs in the house, though they claimed that they found traces of cocaine. So they basically just bust through these people's houses for no reason. After the APC left, it slid on an ice patch and crashed into a Cadillac. The ACLU sued over the battering ram. California Supreme Court ruled that the ram was excessive and that they need a judge's permission on a case-by-case basis to use it. But the judge did allow flashbangs to be freely used without a judge's permission.
Wow, that's quite interesting.
So by the 1990s, just about every city with about 100,000 people in it had a SWAT team in America.
And it was advised by the LAPD.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much for that historical anchor. I want to definitely get into the panel discussion now. We have guests here that have some very serious issues to discuss. But before we get started, I wanted Kat to add her 2 cents in, whatever she has prepared for today, and then bring it to Tasha, and then we'll engage the entire panel in discussions on the topics.
Sure. Okay. Well, for those, I want to make sure that I'm going to move my mic over. So for those that aren't familiar with the work that we do, I am in City Heights, a community member. We've been cop watching in our community pretty much almost on a 24-hour basis. So a lot of the work that we do is basically not restricted. I don't want to use that word, but it's concentrated there. That's been my entire world, especially since Trump hasn't been in office. Very rarely we go to cop watch other locations. I believe that there was a Sergio Week, Jonathan Cornell protest that we had filmed the Vista sheriffs and the tactics that they were using, and it was very much intimidation tactics. When I hear about the battering ram, one would think, why is it such a threat to protect people, to feed people? Because the programs that the Black Panthers were using were actually something outside of government to actually support the people. So it goes to show what kind of threat that they would see people power coming together. And they also believed in racial solidarity and mobilizing, the Chicano movement, poor whites. So basically, Black Panthers were the very first cop watchers, when you think about it. But they asserted their right. They only showed that they knew what their rights were. And that was very powerful in that time, that they knew that they could recite the Constitution. They knew what it meant for them as community members, as citizens. And so a lot of, basically, we're on a community defense when I think of the Black Panthers. A recent SWAT type setting that we filmed. There's a few SWAT incidents. The most recent one, I believe, was Pennsylvania and 5th, and that was Monday. Allegedly, somebody called in, and again, it was more of a psychiatric response. Allegedly, there was someone was holding hostages, but those hostages actually came out after that man. So he basically barricaded himself in his home. There was a good hour that we were filming. We were not able to actually witness, and police can use that discretion too with press passes. We weren't able to witness the actual impact. We were able to hear it as far as the rubber bullets and the less lethal rounds that they fired, which were quite a few. And this was after about an hour of negotiation. It can't help but wonder, why does it have to take so many? Why does it have to be as egregious as, not knowing when to stop squeezing the trigger? It's, when you think about it, for a group of officers to kind of get together and plot, and in theory, it sounds great that they can actually come up with strategy so that it can prevent an interaction like that. But sometimes we just see like, okay, well, we've, all our resources are exhausted. Why don't we just go in? And that kind of seems like the mentality. Let's just wrap this up. Right. We finally see this person. Let's fire the rounds. And it just always seems like it's just way too many rounds. I don't think it's with the intent of actually getting the person out with proper negotiation, from what I've seen on the ground. And I don't know what goes behind the scenes for them to, just even for that day, just witnessing for that day, more than 12 rounds were fired. Wow. Mm-hmm. So even if they were less lethal, I was still wondering, he was still taken to hospital. It does make me wonder.
There was no PERT either.
There was no PERT on the scene. There were the alleged hostages walked out a lot earlier than, and we did not see any. Allegedly, he had a rifle, although I didn't see any rifle being taken out by police.
The reports? Did they say that they found a rifle in there afterwards, or?
I'm gonna have to look at that again.
Okay, that's fine.
But what we
recap on that.
Sure. And what we're trying to do as cop watchers, because we want to act as press. Mm-hmm. The way to survive and to keep this going, we have to be independent journalists, so that we can capture. Although police, they know us very well. We've already gotten our threats from certain departments. From the show, yeah.
You have a very, very, very interesting occupation, Kat. Very interesting occupation, and I appreciate it. A lot of people don't see it that way, but the first time I heard about it, I just wanted to learn more about what you did, and I think that the more you start to explain it, the more you get down to what the true goal and meaning of what you do is. I get more of an understanding of it and can see why sometimes it's so frustrating as you do it for you. So
we do this for free, like our jobs paid for the equipment.
I personally thank you very much for doing that, and always open to listen to your perspective.
We tell everybody it's our solidarity, it's our protest, it's our peaceful protests.
Definitely.
So when people are on the ground holding a banner, we just rather hold a camera.
There we go. So today we're gonna get down to this panel discussion. I'd like you, if you want to join, you can feel free. Call in 619-356-4704. Once again, that's 619-356-4704. And you can ask Rocio questions. You can ask Bree questions. Goodness, I'm going to get this down. I promise I will. I really will. So before I mess up her name again, I'm going to hand it over to Tasha to go ahead and do the proper introductions, engage the conversations. We'll jump in as we go, but I want you to go ahead and be the MC of this particular panel discussion.
All right. So thank you guys for being here. Rocio is the cousin of Jonathan Cornell. Again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I'll have Rocio talk a little bit about her cousin and what he means to her. Because his life counts, his life matters. And then we also have Bree here, whose uncle is Raul Rivera. He was recently killed last Sunday by police encounter. And she'll also talk a little bit about her uncle and her family and what they're going through as well. And because he counts and he matters, his life matters as well to all of us. So we can start with you, Lucia. You just, let people understand and know, like I was talking earlier, Jonathan was really dehumanized after his murder, and there were the pictures that were shown and the background that was given. It made it acceptable for him to have been murdered in many viewers' eyes, and I think that what we need to do, and when we've talked about this a little briefly, is that we need to humanize these folks. These folks were human beings. Your loved ones were human beings. Your loved ones were loved, and they had family members, and they took care of people, and they did things other than what people are hearing about out in the news and in the world. And so I think that, this is your opportunity to really talk about, Jonathan, and also give us other details of what happened to him, because what we hear is that he was reaching for something, but then we also talked a little bit about there was a witness that said no, he was lying on his stomach and his hands were visible, and so how, talk a little, how many times were bullets fired and how many hit him, and again, guys, that are listening, when we talk about this, I'm really concerned about the families, and when we do the different press and radio and marches and things like that, because you guys relive this every time you talk about it, and so we appreciate you guys being here, both of you, to talk about this, and again, the objective is to humanize your loved one and to let you guys know that we care. Okay. So tell us a little bit about who Jonathan was.
First, tell us about you.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations on your recent graduation.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, my name is Rocio. I just graduated. I just got my master's degree. So I'm an educator. And so I'm excited at that. I mean, I'm still, it's weird. I think, like, I was telling Bray that you get this whole new, these whole new feelings, this whole new level of anger and depression, but there's also, like, good things in my life, and so it's interesting that I have this new, all of these new emotions that I have to live with, this grief, but I still have, like, other good things happening in my life, so it's just interesting for me. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just graduated this May. So my cousin was Jonathan Coronel. We grew up together. We lived in the same house. His family was very close to us. His dad was like my dad, my second dad. Jonathan Coronel was such an energetic and happy person, and he had this contagious laugh, and he was just very like those extroverts who are just very warm and very very, very positive energy. He was a very respectful person. I remember he was my chambelán for my quinceañera, and he hated dancing at the time. He hated dancing, but he did it. Like, he danced voluntarily in front of everyone, in front of all of our family. For me, he volunteered to do it and to be one of my chambelanes for my quinceañera, one of the people that you traditionally dance with when you turn 15. In front of everybody. He had aspirations. I remember when I went to college, I was the first in my family to go to college.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Very nice.
He was definitely very proud of me. My first year of college, we would write each other letters. He had aspirations too. I remember one of the last things he wrote was like, hey, when I get after like I get my after I graduate, like I wanna join a boxing club, and I wanna do mechanic classes. He liked cars. He had aspirations like everybody else. He he was a year younger than me, so we grew up like same age. He was murdered at 24 years old. Um, he was an older brother. He had two younger brothers who he would try to advise and keep them on like a good track, make like be that older brother and that mentor. Um, um, he he later on at 24 he had a before 24 he had a child. Sophia, his daughter, was 3 years old when he was murdered, and he loved his daughter. I think that really gave him a new sense of purpose. I know he wanted to be the best father that he could be. I know he's like written. He would write like Sophia a letter so that when she's older, she would like read it and then, keep different pictures of them together because he really loved his daughter, and I know he wanted to be the best father he could be.
Right.
So it's really sad now that he can't be that. On July 5th of 2017, Jonathan Coronel was brutally executed by a San Diego Sheriff's Deputy, Christopher Villanueva, who shot him like 60 to 22 times. Jonathan Coronel, according to the medical examiner's report, had 22 gunshot wounds. So that day of July 5th, I know he was with his aunt, and his aunt noticed that the police was following them. And it was just weird, and Jonathan knew. He's like, oh, they probably just want me or something, I don't know. But he noticed that they were following him, and
is it because, did these officers know Jonathan? Did they have prior interactions or something? So they kind of had a feeling like this is a guy that if we kind of move around a bit, it might result into something. Is it bored?
Yeah, they knew him. He was he had he missed his court date. And the day before he was murdered, July 4th, he called his probation officer to let him know he missed his court date and that he was gonna turn himself in for missing his court date. And so so they knew him. But when they were following him that day, they didn't.
They didn't have any idea or any reason to actually.
Yeah, they didn't have any reason to pull him over or nothing. Right. They were just following him, so it was really weird. And then I know he went back home, and then he went in another car because he was gonna go work. And then when he's in the truck, I think that's when they noticed that there's different sheriffs coming to get him, and so he got scared, as many people of color are afraid of the police because of what we've seen through our lived experience and the way we've seen in which they kill us even if we comply. So Jonathan feared for his life, and he ran. He ran into somebody's yard, and then that resident saw him, and he said, these are the exact words that resident said. He said, "Perdón, carnal, te tengo que entregar," which means, I'm sorry, brother, I have to turn you in. Because he saw, I'm retelling it as the witness told it. The witness saw the fear in Jonathan's eyes, and he saw the helicopters were out there, and a bunch of cops were gonna get him. And he's like, hey, I have to turn you in. And then Jonathan complied. He's like, okay, because I know Jonathan never ever wanted to put anybody else in danger. So he complied. So what they said, he asked them, okay, take off your shirt so that they know that you're not armed, and then just lay on the floor. And once you do that, I'll call the sheriffs over to take you. And he does exactly that. He takes off his shirt, he lays on the ground, and then once the resident sees that, he goes and he calls the sheriffs and tells them Jonathan's here. And one sheriff comes in, another sheriff comes in, and then they tell him because he was on the ground with his hands on the ground laying, and then they tell him to get on his knees and put his hands behind his back. he does that. And the third officer that comes into the scene with less than a minute, as soon, no questions asked. The third officer is Christopher Villanueva, and he just shoots. He just empties out his gun, shoots 16 times, and then he still reloads the gun, and he walks up to Jonathan after he's twitching in pain. He walks up to Jonathan and he tells him not to move. He points the gun to his head and he tells him not to move, as if any human being could move after being shot 16 to 22 times. And so the witness was so appalled and so outraged at what he saw. The witness had him on the ground. Jonathan was ready to comply, but he was killed in that manner. And I understand why Jonathan was so afraid of the sheriffs and the police, because they had been harassing residents for a long time. Christopher Villanueva, just months before he killed Jonathan, he also shot Sergio Wake 17 times.
Yes.
So we know what they're capable of. That's why we fear for our lives. He shot Sergio Wake 17 times, and he refused the medical care. They left him there to die slowly. And just a few weeks ago, we saw videos in Vista still of the sheriffs slamming two Latino men. They slammed one against the fence, and then one who was already in handcuffs. And on the ground, they slammed his head onto the concrete 5 times. He already was handcuffed. This is what we see on a day-to-day basis. So we know by lived experience what they're capable of. So it only makes sense to run for our lives. So Jonathan Coronel was left there for hours to just die there. After he was killed, the sheriffs arrested the witness and his pregnant wife who was just in the house. They had them in handcuffs just for being there.
Because the information that they had might have contradicted the information that they would later give. I can only assume.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, I know I'm looking at the time as well, so I want to thank you for telling us, but also what people don't understand is that your family organized. Before I switch over to Bree, I want to say your family organized and did some press conferences and met with a sheriff's captain. And then what people don't also know is that some of your family members were actually deported.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I remember that.
And so, and so it was clear that you guys as a family were now separated and re-victimized, instead of provided some types of supports to get whatever was going on with the family situated.
One thing I would like to say though is that I got a chance to also work with the family, and we arranged with the Alfred Olango Foundation to go to Vista and do a march in Jonathan's name. We went all the way to the station, and we sat there, we demonstrated, we spoke of the certain legislations that are allowing this kind of thing to happen and what we can do by coming together.
Sheriffs kept trying to intimidate us with
exactly
the
they
helicopters and everything.
they did, and I
That's
mean
why
the whole tone of that was for families that have gone through this, like me and my brother, to come together on a platform to be able to deliver our story in a way that is unencroached by the narratives that just want people to keep a one-track mind and be either this or that, but the truth is what it is. You know, this is our perspective, and it cannot be not true because it's our perspective, it's our life, it's what we live. Every day I wake up, Alfred isn't here. You know, that older brother I can call anywhere. I'm in America, he would be there the next day, and he has, you know, it's not there anymore. It's taken away. And why? That's the question. And why? So, I'm feeling you for real, and I like to, I'm gonna give it back to Tasha so that, you know, we can continue with Bree here.
I know that we're gonna have to take a break in about 7 minutes.
We're gonna skip that break.
Okay.
We're gonna skip that break.
Well, I want to also thank you for sharing your story, and
We'll actually
you know, what
we'll
your
actually be
family
wrapping
is.
up in 7.
Yeah. And so I want to, you know, let Bree also talk because
This is just
her-
a recent shooting.
her
Last
yes,
Sunday. Last
her
Sunday.
uncle,
Sunday.
her uncle Raul Rivera was murdered in the middle of the street and was shot at over 20, I think it was over 30 times by 3 officers, and I think maybe 20 of them may have hit him, and you know, I want Bree to talk about who you are, and then also who is Raul? Like, humanize Raul for us and the viewers, because what we heard is knife wielding man, but nobody understands that he was wielding a knife in the middle of the street with no one else there, and then also the contact that happened prior. So go ahead, Bree, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bree.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, my name's Bree, and I am Raul Rivera is my uncle. You know, I'm an educator as well, and I just got my master's as well.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. My uncle had a lot of trauma and pain in his life. He unfortunately had to be raised primarily with custody of my grandfather, who also had a lot of trauma, but was very neglectful. You know, he would leave Raul with a lot of different family members or neighbors or just wherever. So my uncle was raised with a lot of different family within his life, but suffered from mental illness. There would be periods where he was okay, but then there would be periods where he'd just be very hurt, he'd be very angry, he'd be very frustrated. So as family, he was very much loved within he has 5 siblings. And so all 5 siblings have taken him in, and their families have taken him in at some point of his life. So, you know, my uncle woke up every day trying to survive. That was the basis of his whole entire life, was trying to survive. And a big core of that is, in order for him to survive, he had to suppress the pain that he had, and to be able to navigate this world that constantly criminalized him as being a brown man, and a brown man with a lot of hurt and pain. My Uncle Raul was actually staying with another uncle of mine, my Uncle Louis. And, you know, that night he was actually supposed to meet my Uncle Louis back at the place to go out for a birthday dinner, because my Uncle Raul, his birthday was on May 19th. But they hadn't had a chance to celebrate, so they had made plans to celebrate that night. But my Uncle Raul never showed up. You know, the night before they made those plans and stuff, he was already very upset and he was very frustrated. And so, you know, my Uncle Louis and some of the neighbors had said that, you know, that my Uncle Raul was having a hard time within about 24 hours. So on Sunday, May 27th, hours before my uncle being murdered in the street, he was in the Nestor neighborhood, so South Bay, San Diego, by an overpass. And he was positioning himself looking down on ongoing cars on the freeway. He actually got called in as a jumper from a neighbor. So police showed up at the site. They convinced my uncle to speak to him, and within a short little conversation that they had by that overpass, they let him walk away. They let him go.
Was there a PERT team that came initially to talk to him in that particular time where he was presenting himself as a jumper to someone watching?
No, what the detectives had told us, it was just police on site.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or those clinicians.
Yeah.
That's a missed opportunity as far as I'm concerned, because he had no knife at that point, right?
No, he wasn't showing any knife or anything present. He was positioning himself over the overpass.
Okay, yeah, that's concerning.
And the person that had called in to the cops described him as a jumper. There's a jumper. There's a man positioning himself over the overpass. You need to come. And so that's how they got that call in. So they spoke to him, and my uncle had said to him, I'm not gonna hurt myself, but I am depressed. My father had passed. The detective still had described that the officer had mentioned that he was acting a little erratic, but they let him walk away.
Right.
They should have had brought him in. It should have been a 5150. He should have gotten a psych evaluation, and they let him walk away. So hours later, my uncle was walking within the Nestor community and Takuma, or I forget the cross street, how to pronounce it. Takayo. Nestor and Takayo. A couple people had called in saying there's a man in the middle of the street, he's kicking oncoming traffic. To what I understand from what the detectives were telling us, Border Patrol were the first ones on site, and that was because they saw like some commotion in the middle of the street. Border Patrol interacted with my uncle, cornered him, and called police on site.
Okay, can we stop that right there? I would like you to hang on to that. What I would like to do is sign out.
We're going to sign out of the radio show, but we are on Facebook Live.
We're going to continue on Facebook Live in the other room, and we'll continue her story. We'll continue streaming it because it's a story that must be heard. We only have 1 minute per week to get this done. There's so much to get done. Something 1 hour. Oh my goodness! I have been. We have 1 minute left.
We have a minute left.
Yeah. You got a minute left. You got a minute left. So we'll continue streaming this. Please stay with us, listen to this story, and understand where the perceptions are coming from. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today.
And you can join us Facebook Live, Tasha Williamson, and Kat. What is yours?
We're on YouTube, Kitty Cat Cop Watch, and my Quorum Facebook page. We're still streaming. So.
All right, stay with us, please. Thank you very much. We're moving to the other room. B1, be luminous. God bless the Quorum.
Bye.
Thank you, K Black Radio.
KB, okay.
When you
Gracious host.
before you stream, tilt your phone to
Oh, the other way.
before you turn it on.
Okay.
Run that.
I don't know what it's just a.
I'll bring home
It's
to
a
the
quirky.
other room.
Turn that up.
Okay, here we go. So we are transitioning to another room where we're going to continue the conversation. Again, this is our hour for my quorum is up, although we really need to finish out of respect. And, yep.
I got a meeting at 12, but I'll be late because it must be done.
Yes, yes. So.
Termite inspection. Contact them at 877-277-3970.
We're just, we gotta move out. Still got another show coming.
3970. Pain Pest Management.
Sorry. I know we don't.
So we can do this.
I'll take mine, so I can turn it.
It's
They could probably hear everybody outside. Hey guys, sorry about that. We had to break from the radio show, but we're going to continue on this one.
just getting your book. The reactionary behavior of people coming in to cops is absolutely ridiculous. We get everything from someone's putting their leaves in our lawn, and someone is yelling, someone is running down the street. That reactionary behavior that everything requires.
Yeah.
To call cops. Yeah, absolutely.
But the most,
Sorry.
like the more tragic things are the ones like this one where it's like you called for help. They called to help because they thought somebody was in danger, and then the police come and put them in danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with Alfred Olango and Jonathan Clark. Yeah, it's like it's terrible. By the way, Rocio, I saw the debate between Summer Steffens and Genevieve. Good on you. Good on you for that. That was wonderful. Made me proud.
Yeah, and people just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Early on, we know that information may be inaccurate, and we may know that information may stay inaccurate, and then sometimes, they'll come back and update information for accuracy. But a lot of times, the information that gets out about family is information provided by law enforcement.
Or when Summer Steffens came out with
And the DA.
press conference, and nobody knew about it.
No,
I
nobody knew.
found out about it the same day because
nobody
media
knows,
messaged me, and I
Nobody
forwarded to
knows that the
RCO.
witness got arrested and his
I didn't know
pregnant
that.
wife.
Or that they
You know.
arrested Jonathan's little brother at the fundraiser for
Nobody
his
knows.
funeral.
And there was a lot of stuff that Summer Steffen really had no place, no business, no nothing to
Agreed.
even mention. It was absolutely irrelevant. It wasn't substantiated.
Whereas, like, if I remember correctly, they were trying to say that he was on meth and pot, as if that's like as if that's a reason to
And
kill
you know,
somebody.
if you remember when Brenda Cecenia was called in last Border Patrol, how they settled and saying because of Francisco's lifestyle had a big impact. And for for them to say something like that, to make a judgment on what they were going to settle on, it seems like there's a lot of respectability politics
Yeah.
that
for
still
sure.
plague that who is worthy of living versus
Yeah.
who would need to be eradicated. And it's the same racism that, that was discovered when, ever since police began,
And who also is worthy of accountability.
Yeah.
We are are held to a higher accountability than law enforcement, I believe. That is my belief. Law enforcement can get away with doing things that we cannot. I think that there lacks a clear accountability on law enforcement, unless Summer will bring up, and the law enforcement will bring up cases like the officer or deputy who has 14, counts against him now that Summer has now charged, 14 counts for sexual.
And had to
took
get
14
that
years
far,
It was like,
had to
yeah,
get,
Yeah.
witnesses actually had to start calling that out
yeah,
publicly, and then she's
so
finally.
It's just difficult. It's very difficult because I'm understanding that the accountability is not equal, it's not equitable, and sometimes it's not just. And again, go back to, is it justice or just us, from what Eva Lassiter said, and it is an us against them, and it shouldn't be.
Should not.
We
Shouldn't be at all.
want, we want the relationship to work. But it cannot work if they're only holding one side accountable and not the other. Because we're being held accountable for a lot of things, and they're being held accountable for things, and we don't know some of the things that they're either not being held accountable for or being held accountable for, because it's private.
That all goes back to legislation.
And I think there.
Personally, for me, it makes me have a great sense of hope having people that are involved in this that are educated. In the families that are going through these difficult times and situations, they have family members that love them deeply and that are educated, and I can begin to understand and take on that quest of understanding what is really happening. Like I spoke about last week, there are observers and then there are experiencers. At this table, we're dealing with experiencers. We're not observers. And that creates a completely different perspective to what is really happening once you start moving forward as an experiencer, and hopefully with what we share with everyone, they can begin to understand what an experiencer's life truly is and why we continuously attempt to champion changing of certain legislations that block the ability for us to get justice in a place where justice is supposed to be given. It has to be fought for and it has to be earned intellectually, and that is our fight. And like my father said, and I stick with it, we will fight and we will fight to win. And I'm not giving up for anything, and I know you're not. That doctorate you have, I believe you're going to find a way to make it work towards getting resolution and changes for people in the future. And the same doctorate you have, I'm not sure what it is. Same master's. I'm so sorry.
They working
You
on,
should
they
have said
working on
something.
doctorate.
I'm sorry. I am sorry.
Doctors, these
I'm sorry.
they working
I'm
on
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry.
Well, you know what?
Maybe
Call
I'm
it
feeling
into
the
call
future.
it. That's
Maybe I'm
right.
feeling the
Like,
future.
that's
Maybe I'm
it.
feeling the future. Get those doctors.
If I may make a plea,
Mhm.
real quickly, time me on it, maybe like 15 seconds.
Mhm.
For the ones, I mean, I've never experienced a family member being stolen at the hands of law enforcement. So in that category, you want to say that you're an ally, you're an accomplice. I like to consider myself an accomplice. For everybody tuning in, and this is for the YouTube channel, this is for Facebook, putting it out there, what kind of line of defense are we establishing in our own communities to de-escalate and prevent something from happening, something proactive, something that preserves families while they are living? You know, you say you fight like hell for the living. Let's not forget that. Let's keep in mind that if we're doing a vigil for somebody who has passed away, if somebody were to leave that vigil, what am I going to do that's proactive in my community to de-escalate a situation? Me personally, and I think Tasha kind of knows my personality. I don't like to vote. I feel like I'm going to be doing some people a favor by voting this time. But I don't want to wait around. I don't want to wait.
I need everybody to vote. If you don't vote,
I'm a free thinker.
So
There is a piece. Well, there is a piece of
people who don't vote.
There is a piece of
the person that you don't want in to get in.
And
you know,
when it comes to voting, say no to the status quo. That's
you know
my
what?
line. Say no to the status quo.
I am definitely not a Trump supporter.
Nope.
I think we got to also put the blame on the people that pushed Trump into office. There have been times, hold on, there have been times where I have voted. I don't want to wait for something to hopefully be voted in. I want to be more proactive. I don't trust government systems. I really don't. What I would like to see is just building a line of defense. This is no longer protesting. In my opinion, it's no longer performative action. Yes, you can take the streets, you can have signs, you can have banners. What is something proactive so you're not mourning for the person to be on another photograph or button or, you know.
It's prevention.
It's the prevention. I mean, you know, we're pushing, there is an assembly bill, I can't remember the number, but it actually is fighting for transparent misconduct. I can't remember the number. I get very confused, but I don't know if you can Google it real quick, Art.
Are you talking about
the misconduct? If it gives transparency to the misconduct records of law enforcement officers.
They gave me so many numbers. Is that SB 913?
No, well, you know, it's 4 digits, but there are assembly bills that are geared towards helping to end the systemic racism. My thing is, the system is always built that way. So we can push for reforms, but we can. There's got to be something else in place. I can't wait that long.
Yeah, no, I feel you, Kat. And for me and my thing, I think we can do both. I think we can, like, that's what I do. I'm voting, and I also understand that the system was not meant to protect us, and those tools will not, like, ultimately they will not free us, but I need to intervene and to be involved. And I also understand that we need to do things autonomously as well within our community. I was reading, I think her name, she's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and she wrote her memoir, When They Call You a Terrorist.
Oh, Patrice Cohen.
Patrice Cohen, there you go. Yeah, and she has this model where she's building different forms of community accountability where we can rely on each other to de-escalate those situations so that we no longer have to rely on the police, and that ultimately to defund that, so that we within, similar to what the Black Panthers were doing, our own communities of like defense, cop watching, things like that. And for me, it's more like I got to do both, because people are getting into these offices and creating these legislations and doing these things that are oppressing our community. And so how do I intervene in that matter? But how do I also work to create a better world where we can live fully and with dignity and I need to do everything in my capacity, and that's.
I think just all of us get to know our neighbors more. Our neighborhood needs to be our world. That when you know if somebody's not feeling good, you're able to de-escalate. You're able to be there for them. We're separating ourselves. We're in a very propertarian culture where, you know, something is stolen, something is taken, somebody's not doing the right thing on my grass type of, or somebody's running down the street and I don't know why, but instead of just asking me like, hey, what's your hurry? There's just so much reaction to what someone does versus, you know, just getting to know that person. And, you know, calling somebody with a gun, people with guns, calling for backup. Many times we see up to a dozen officers for one person detained. Last night, I mean, it goes as far as, you know, security guards. I was mentioning to Apollo, last night there was a security guard that was armed at El Super and pulled out a BB gun to intimidate a black male that was shopping at the shopping center in City Heights, and cops came, and I feel a lot better that we filmed the situation, so at least that male that, you know, was shopping did not get in trouble, and the red person got in trouble, but I can't rely.
I want to be respectful because we cut Bree.
Yes, that's
Okay,
what I wanted to
sorry.
get back
And
on.
I know you
want
wanted. Do you have the bill? The name of the
definitely
bill?
continue
I don't
to
have
tell
the name
the
of the
story
bill.
about
I
Raul Rivera of last Sunday. So if you can pick up from where we left off, I definitely appreciate it. We're definitely streaming you from all different sides. So let's get what needs to be heard out. Because before we start there, has there been any media attention? Have you received any assistance from community organizations that want to understand more what went on in the case, the way that Rosario and I received Rocio. That's just gonna be a nickname for now. You might have to stick with that. Rocio. Yeah, Rocio and I, you know, our families were able to get some assistance from organizations to be able to get the word out about what went on and get us in a fight to attempt to get these legislations changed. And after that, you can basically just continue from where we rudely cut you off at the end of the hour. Sorry about that.
Which part would you like me to start off with? There's a lot there.
It's your choice. Okay. Whatever makes you comfortable.
I'll finish off where I had left off, talking about what happened to my uncle, and then I definitely talk about media and then organizations afterwards.
Yeah.
So on Sunday, May 27th, so my uncle was killed around 10:50. So prior to 10:50 p.m. at night on Sunday, Border Patrol were the first kind of like officials that had seen him in the street, and so they cornered him. You know, they identified as my uncle being erratic and kicking oncoming cars. My uncle had a pocket knife. So they were telling him, you know, to drop it, and my uncle was very upset. It was just like, I like to be I want to be left alone. Leave me alone. Not today. Leave me alone. He was very upset. Border Patrol called police officers. So in a short amount of time, from the Border Patrol to police officers getting on site, the complete intersection was completely surrounded with officers. Anywhere between 30 to 40 officers were there on the site prior to my uncle being shot down in that intersection. It was there were so many community members that were out there and present on all four corner intersections. There were so many witnesses. There were so many people recording. People estimate, you know, when police got on site and stuff like that, it probably took about 15 minutes or less for my uncle to be murdered there in the street, from them getting on site. They completely circled my uncle all around those four intersections. So, you know, the claims is that they attempted to use less legal weapons of beanbags and taser. Now, from all the witnesses that I had spoken to just on Wednesday and stuff, and what they were telling the media, it's like the beanbags that they had tried to shoot, like majority of them didn't even hit my uncle. People probably think maybe one or two because, you know, my uncle was running in a circle in a tight little circle because some of them closed in on him. They saw him limping on one side, so they're like maybe like one or two and stuff, but majority of them did not hit him. And then they say that the one attempt for a taser was demonstrated, but as soon as it punctured my uncle, he ripped it out. So it never shocked him. It never took full effect on his body. And so 3 officers murdered my uncle, shooting him over 20 times. We're still waiting to get official count of how many hit the body, but witnesses completely captured my uncle being murdered, and they released the names of the 3 officers. Now, 1 officer was in the force for 1 year, 1 officer has been in the force for 2 years, and 1 for 6 years. The 3 officers shot my uncle and continued to shoot him after he fell on the ground. When they stopped shooting at him, they handcuffed him. He was dead on the floor, and they handcuffed him.
They seem to do that a lot.
And the witnesses, the community members stayed out there the whole time, and they were recording. It took about 15 to 20 minutes for an ambulance to get on site. So there was no reviving, there was no rush to get there to my uncle. He still remained there handcuffed. They get on site and they slowly, just having little side conversations. I can see this all on this video that the witnesses had got.
Right.
And they're just slowly just walking to my uncle, rip his shirt, and just, start putting the, little instruments on him and stuff like that, with just no disregard for my uncle's life. They never saw his humanity. He was completely dehumanized from beginning to end. And my uncle remained on that street till the next morning, handcuffed. We weren't notified, until Monday afternoon what happened. So we didn't know where my uncle was that whole night. But we were notified Monday afternoon. The community has been outraged, in pain with us. They made a community grave for him, and with a cross and with signs that said the community knows the truth. On the cross that they made, they didn't know his name. They tried to find out what his name was, but to humanize him, to know that he's more than just man killed by police, they gave him a name. They put Juan on the cross because they know that this person had a name, he had a life, he had a family.
Right.
So
people who cared for him.
People that cared for him. The community. They shot. There's so many lives affected by this, and so many people that were there, not only dehumanizing my uncle, but complete disregard for everybody's life that was out there, shooting that many times in front of that many amount of people, and there was kids out there, and the community members who can't sleep, who have anxiety, who are now some families were talking about, I want to sell my house. Like I've been living here for decades, and I always have felt this was a safe neighborhood, and look at what they did.
The trauma.
The trauma. Is the police going to go down there and try to heal the community? Who's going to pay for their therapy? Who's going to pay for their anxiety medicine, for their insomnia now?
Exactly.
So there's just so many people affected and that been grieving with us. So my family has been the first. Our first time going to the place where my uncle was murdered in Nestor, and the intersection of Nestor and Tocayo, was Wednesday night, and so we had already made letting the community know and letting other people know that we are out there every night at 6 p.m. At that community grave, and different people have met us and been grieving with us. And the first time we talked to media was on Thursday. And then the media let them know that we're there every night and so forth. And in regards to organizers, Rocio's actually a friend that we've known each other for the past 2 years, close friends and stuff. So she's been a great resource for me, and she already was because we're such close friends and stuff, but then going through this and grieving together and sharing her experiences. And then Tasha would be the next person. So other than that, no, I haven't talked with other organizers and so forth.
The Alfred Olango Foundation
relations here with you, I can tell you that. I can
She
definitely
met
tell
your
you
brother.
that.
Yes.
She met Tony.
My little brother Tony, yeah.
Yeah.
We're definitely here. Hopefully we can get something together, so that we can be able to stand together. Like I said earlier, there's a platform that is here for families that need to come together and work together to get some sort of legislative change, to get some sort of they don't want to say sorry, do they? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, they don't want to
Of
admit
course
they
not.
did anything wrong.
The first time I met Chief Neeslight was the first time in the back of the room at the Hall of Justice with Reverend Shane Harris, where I heard any kind of an apology, and I couldn't. It was so difficult to talk. I couldn't. For me, it's easy to talk. I could say what I need to say and just but I couldn't speak because that's all we wanted to hear. Something like that, because it makes it feel as if you know that what you did has some sort of problem with morality. There's
That
something,
came from the wrong
and
department.
just to
though.
deny it and to not even give it, but instead incriminate and
I wonder
handcuff.
if
Where's
he'll give it here. Which
Yeah,
is
that's what I'm
like
wondering.
with his SDPD officers having committed this murder. Whether they deem it justified or unjustified.
But what about all the other shootings,
He apologized here. He's apologized for yours. You're saying, but his officers weren't involved in your brothers. They were involved.
It's
in
easy to
this
apologize for
situation.
something you have
Yeah.
nothing to do with. Yeah.
So
True.
that is, and the apology came nearly 2 years later, mind you, and then in a private setting.
Yeah.
And technically, we're really not allowed to even talk about certain things because of the lawsuit that's going on. So just to get that apology, the prior chief of police didn't give an apology. Did even accidentally bump into us and just say, we can't talk about certain things, but I just want to let you know, your family, that was a terrible loss, and we will try and do something better or work towards that with community leaders. None of that. It was just, this person was a terrible human being. This person had a criminal record. This person did A, B, C, and D. Yeah, he got shot and killed, but this was who that person was. That narrative, people don't know our family. So when that narrative overrides,
That picture that they put
sense of being dismissive,
Yeah.
you become dismissive. So they override with that media, and everyone becomes dismissive, like, oh, just another brother shot and he was in the system, whatever. It doesn't even matter how they treated him, left him out in the streets, handcuffed, a dead body handcuffed, as if this was that person. He should have been handcuffed while he was alive for his entire life, It's almost like putting a stamp of ownership on somebody and leaving them there just to show it. They used to do that back in the day. They would show it to the community. Like, this could be you, handcuffed here like a dog while you can't even move your own body because your life doesn't exist in it, And just the mindset of that, the psychology of it, just, it makes me want to even fight more. And I want to say sorry about the loss of Paul. I'm sorry, Raul. I'm terrible with names. But Raul Rivera is a name that's going to stick with me like Jonathan Coronel will. And so many others. And whatever you want to talk about, just talk about it. We're streaming. I got a meeting at 12, but if you're watching where you should be, I'm going to be late.
So now you have people saying much love to the
I'm
families,
gonna be late.
and then also people saying their deepest condolences to
I'm
the
going to be
family.
late. I'm going to be late.
I'm having a hard time plugging my phones in. One of them, the battery is low, and I just wanted to give that heads up.
Okay.
Mine is charged on a charger, so I'm live and people are chiming in. And I want
we
to
on the
say
Maya
that
Quorum
I
family?
appreciate you
Yeah.
guys for
I don't know how much battery power
being
that I
strong
have.
and finding that strength within
Plug
while
one
you're
of those
grieving.
and shove it in.
Something's not being
And to
used.
talk about it, and
Printer.
to want people to know who your loved one is, Jonathan and Raul.
Yeah.
And what they represented to your family, and that they're not just what we see in the news or what we see on the ground when the incidents happen, that they're actual people, they're human beings deserving of a human experience with dignity and respect. And today we were talking about SWAT. They don't just have SWAT here, they have a special response team. They have another response team that has fire and rescue with it called PRT. And that brings an ambulance when they respond. And all that I'm saying, and I've said to you guys, I've said to law enforcement, is that we want our people meaning our people who live in poverty, our people who are Black, brown, living in with mental illness. We want our people to count, and we want there to be a pause when they respond to our people. We want that if there is no imminent danger to anyone else besides the individual, that they take the time to stop, reassess the situation, as SWAT, as SRT, as PRT do, and pause, right? And gather within themselves to say, now let's begin negotiations, right? Now let's begin a response that will try to have a greater percentage of this person's life not being taken. That we take the time and the patience that we've looked, because if you looked Art at what they say about SWAT, SWAT has been around for 40 years, and SWAT they're constantly training. They're constantly training. SRT is a full-time SWAT team. Started in 1985. They maintain a high level of operational readiness and train constantly to be able to come out to scenes, to get control, right, and to help preserve life. PRT is a primary response team with patrol officers that are in every division throughout the city. And these officers have had to work patrol for at least 3 years to get this training. San Diego Fire Department has 2 medics that are firefighters from the Special Trauma and Rescue response team that go out on call-outs and warrants. So those call-outs with SWAT and SRT and PRT, we have the STAR team that goes out on those call-outs and warrant service operations with an ambulance. So we're asking for more of this and less of what we're getting, because what we're seeing is that when the regular patrol respond,
they don't have
they don't have some of them do have the experience, but they're desensitized.
Yes.
You know, there's been so much trauma that they've experienced and seen and they haven't gotten the proper care, right? To be able to do the job as they started out wanting to do it. For most, I don't speak for everybody that's in law enforcement, but you know, my thing is.
What about the communities that are traumatized by having a dozen or so officers dressed up in military gear?
I'm in agreement with you, Kat.
Girl.
I think that we're all traumatized. And I think that the level of care and the level of commitment is very different on both sides. I think that when you kill somebody's family member, the response should be to support them, whether that family member did anything or not. These family members are now victims, right? They have a tremendous loss. And they are devastated, and we will create more trauma, we will create more pain, we will create more victims, right?
And we will also, it says that it's okay to do that for the people that have done that. There is no sense of wrongdoing after doing something immoral. So it continues that way. They stay dark to that side of, oh, this is kind of painful to someone. It's just cup them up and leave them there, and that becomes the culture, and that's what the culture is.
And I totally agree. I totally agree. But also, we have to understand these officers are going back into our streets now, having murdered somebody, and now it becomes, you know, a concern. Well, it becomes a concern because whether we trust them or not, they patrol our streets. And so we need to ensure that while they're patrolling our streets, because these murders become justified, that the type of care that they need, because we do not want another incident to happen as it did with your cousin Jonathan.
I mean,
where he was somebody else was killed prior, very recently prior,
and in
to
the same
manner.
And he'll probably do it again.
Yeah, he still works for the department.
But the rhetoric is constantly funneling more money into police departments, and the priority is not training, or the priority is for their accessories, their tools.
I'm talking about training. I'm talking about the fact that the police department has over 200 resources for care for them. there's already money there and resources there for them that are going unused. And I'm saying there needs to be a mandate for them to be used up.
Right.
Because we have officers who are dealing with huge amounts of trauma and huge amounts of responsibility that they're failing at. And they're not utilizing all of the services that are available to them by this city and county. And they should be mandated to use them.
Who's responsible to mandate them to do that?
That would be legislators as well as their chiefs. And their
So you say
sheriffs,
that falls in these
because
lights
they
hand
need to
at this
they can
current time?
change their policy, right? And they can mandate that. But the officers' Bill of Rights cannot have that much power that we're not caring effectively and properly for officers, especially those when we see that they're in need of services but not getting them.
But
right? Or using
so much money needs to be reallocated to the right priorities and not,
this money's already there, Kat. There's no money that needs to be reallocated. This money is
well,
there,
the amount of money
resources are
for,
there, and they're going unused every year.
but the amount of money that they're investing in equipment to do SWATs.
Did you unplug anything?
I did.
You unplugged the whole system.
Oh my gosh.
You never. That's what
Okay. He told me to do it.
No, what did you unplug? Because we took us all the way up here.
Ah, crap. Paulo.
Okay.
I take responsibility.
So I have,
You
okay,
can find
sorry.
me.
But I have about 1% on my stream,
I'm good.
but yours doesn't
It
tilt
doesn't,
to
sorry.
show everybody.
when you guys talk.
But, well, the time right now is 11:31. How much more, because I gotta head
Let's
back
carry
to
this,
city.
yeah, let's carry
Yeah, well,
this
you know what,
on
we
to our
got
next show.
Saturday.
Our next
Next
show
Saturday,
Saturday. I'm gonna
yes.
have my father on, and we're gonna have some other guests as well, and it's gonna be Killings 2.
Yeah.
So I believe this can carry on. We're gonna restructure the entire hour to where it's gonna be more allocated to getting straight down to business and discussing those particular aspects and more of what we're discussing right now. So I hope you bring those same notes, and that's gonna be one of the topics that we're gonna re-break down and get into as we talk about the live experience of every single experiencer. So if you're interested in doing that and have the ability of coming back and helping engage in that discussion with my father, with the quorum, the panel, I would love to have you guys both back. I'm more than open to that, and please give me your contact information so we can see what we can do moving forward and becoming one.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right, thank you all
All
for
right, thank
viewing.
you all.
Stay tuned, Maya
All
Quorum.
right, shutting
All right,
out
peace, you guys. See
stream.
you later.
Let's get out of here. We've already broken a law.